moved in '73 in the wintertime, and we moved on to the family estate. And on that, it was about 65 acres, and on that property there were about an acre or two of formal gardens, formal boxwood gardens that my mother-in-law had constructed in the early 1940s. And she had copied a lot of she had the Olmsted firm design some gardens for her in Atlanta, and so she took a lot of those elements of those gardens and had some local guy with a mule and a drag pan carve out these series of beautiful formal gardens using some of the same design elements as the house in Atlanta. Well, those were abandoned less than 10 years after they were constructed, and the family lost all their money and moved to Greenville, and so for about 20 years those gardens were totally neglected. And we moved back here, as I said, in '73, didn't pay much attention to them until it had to be about the first week in May, the following spring. And we walked down there, and in the middle of all the weeds and briars and overgrown boxwood that had not been clipped for 20 years and Japanese azaleas, there were these beautiful flowering shrubs they just looked like clouds of pink, and the little flowers looked like pink butterflies, and I had never seen anything like it. I'm getting goosebumps now. Look at this.
We are too.
About them. I mean, it was like a revelation to me, and of course my husband knew what they were. Did anybody know what they were?
Pink shell.
Yeah, they would. If you're up here, you know what a pink shell azalea is. But they are probably the rarest of all the native azaleas. They only occur in about 5 counties in western North Carolina in nature. They're in the trade, but not very much, because well, they're actually considered endangered species now. But there are 5 counties in western North Carolina just yesterday. And it says a lot of what I was hoping to say. I've given you just sort of my personal experience with how I got hooked on them, but in terms of a general overview of native azaleas, he says a lot of things that I would like to read. Okay, this was from December 2001, which was the first year I ever bought a native azalea. So I guess other people were thinking about them too. Despite the current trend towards gardening with native plants, there are many species out there that have yet to get the attention they deserve. Case in point are native azaleas. Mainly indigenous to the southeastern United States, these azaleas are considered by some authorities to be the most beautiful of all our native shrubs. And there are certain things that I wish I could underline here. It's no big mystery why the native azaleas have so far been kept in the shadows. The enormous popularity of Asian species has created in the minds of many a standard for what azaleas should be: spring blooming, low, mounding, evergreen, and custom built for foundation plantings. And native azaleas are few of these things. For one, they lose their leaves in the fall. Rather than being low and dense, some native azaleas grow quite tall and airy. They shouldn't be pruned, as it spoils their naturally graceful habit. The vivid flower colors of the hybrid Asians are not usually found in the natives, except maybe the flame azaleas, of course. And not all of the native species bloom in the spring. However, native azaleas have their own virtues. The trick to designing with these plants is not to consider them substitutes for the Asian azaleas, but rather to see them in their own right as showy, spring and summer flowering shrubs with softer colors and more natural growth habits. Native azaleas allow you to extend your flowering display throughout the growing season. Indeed, for every month of the spring and summer, there's usually at least one native azalea aglow with inflorescence, and that's what I think is kind of neat, because if you have a whole bunch of different kinds, you've always got one blooming. Some, such as the plumleaf azalea, Rhododendron prunifolium, flower as late as August or even into September. Typically, the flowers, which appear at the tips of the branches, are pink or white and tube-shaped, with flaring petals and long showy stamens. So basically, for me, the order of bloom of these things would be Vasii, the pink shell. After the Vasii bloom, the pinkster flower would be number 2. After the pinkster flower would be probably the ones that are blooming now, just starting to bloom, the flame azaleas. And roughly concurrent with the flame azaleas would be the sweet azaleas. And then the prunifoliums come quite a bit later in the summer. So that would be sort of the order of blooming. But then there are all these hybrids in between, so they sort of keep the display going for continuously. What's more, when the flowering season draws to a close, a few of the native azaleas, such as the pinkster bloom, Periclymenoides, and also the Vasii, are just beautiful fall. Extend the season even further with their colorful displays of fall foliage. Native azaleas are woodland plants. They prefer high, dappled shade, plentiful moisture with excellent drainage, and the humus-rich, acid soil. They do well in cultivation, however. Whereas in the forest, they might bloom irregularly due to sporadic sunlight when grown in light shade. In mid-Atlantic gardens, they grow faster, leaf out better, and flower even more evenly and profusely. They can even thrive in areas where exotics won't survive. Bonus, native azaleas are low maintenance, relatively free of pests and disease problems. Cultivating native plants gives a regional feeling to a garden, blending the natural history of the area into your site. Early bloomers like the pink shell and the Florida azalea both bloom before leafing out, and they should be planted against a background, a green background like a hedge of rhododendrons or evergreen hedge. Anyway, he just goes on to extol the virtues, but he makes some very, very important points here, that the fact that they are deciduous